All right, great. So we're going to go ahead and get our meeting started here. My name is Don Ficken. I'm with the Library Telescope Program, and I'm joined here tonight by Tom Lynch. We together lead the International Library Telescope Task Force. And we've been doing some videos basically once a month for quite a long time. And tonight's video is an interesting one. We're going to have a little discussion about the Library Telescope Program, the top 10 questions asked by astronomers. And so I'm with the St. Louis Astronomical Society and here in the Missouri area, St. Louis, the USA, and Tom Lynch is in New York. So if you've not familiar with the Library Telescope Program, it's been around since 2008. It's got well over 1,000 library locations, and we just added over this last few weeks here a new country. Switzerland was added on, so we're up to 7 countries, and I think we're working on another one right now. So we're trying to get ourselves positioned in Europe, and of course we've also got the USA and a few other countries there. So we're making some progress. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on our Facebook page. Tom is our rock star. He's been doing a pretty good job of building a strong base of followers. And we've got a website that's full of resources. And of course, our goal really, we're just a bunch of volunteers working together. Our goal is really to grow the program and then share best practices. So we're all doing this unpaid, just having some fun here with trying to expand this wonderful program. One of the things that you can do that is really a lot of fun, one of our members is a part of the Astronomical League, or actually several of us are, and they have put together monthly sky maps. Here's an example here for the June night sky. These are all free sky charts that are available on the front page of the librarytelescope.org. It has English and Spanish, and then there's usually some cool extra things, extra maps to look for the months. So I really do encourage you to take a look at our homepage. We got a lot of resources out there. And if you dive a little deeper in there, you'll, of course, find a world map and some other things to look up and resources on how to start your own program. The webinars that I've been talking about have been going on for quite a while. Last month, we had the top 10 questions asked by librarians. You can imagine that librarians are never quite sure about what a library telescope program really is all about. So we tried to answer those, and that video is stored, or the link to that video is stored on the front page of our website of librarytelescope.org. And tonight we'll be talking about the top 10 questions asked about astronomers. Now, astronomers will typically support the program and help librarians out. And next month, what we're going to cover is common maintenance issues that we come up with, because there's a lot of questions that both astronomers and librarians have, like what breaks and how do you fix it kind of stuff. So we'll be talking a little bit about that next month. So we will be taking questions at the end. This is a fairly short webinar. Basically, it's 30 minutes in total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close the screen out. We're going to bring up another one. But you can post your questions on Facebook if you're on Facebook. And if you happen to be on Zoom, you can put those there. And once again, we'll try to take those at the end. So if you just hang on 1 second here, let me move over to my other slide and we'll get started with the main program. Okay, Tom, you want to confirm you can see that? Can you see it okay?
Yes, I can see it.
So once again, our topic tonight, and we do have a lot of different topics in our webinars, everything from what a patron might be interested in to a librarian to astronomer or educator, whatever else. And so tonight's program is about the top 10 questions asked by astronomers. And what Tom and I are both experienced, we've been doing this quite a while, and we've actually got some other folks on our Zoom call tonight that also are fairly experienced. And so we're just going to alternate between some of the questions. And let's start out by explaining a little bit about the telescope itself. Now, if you're not familiar with the Library Telescope Program, it's very simple. It's a telescope that we put into libraries for checkout, like a book. And at least in the Metro St. Louis area, our libraries will check it out from 1 to 3 weeks, depends on the library system. Very simply, on the left-hand side, one of the more common products, there are several different kinds of telescopes. One of the more common telescopes is the Orion Star Blast. It's a 4.5-inch or 114 millimeter telescope. It's a tabletop, pretty powerful. On the left-hand side is what you see. That's what you would basically get when you buy it. And that's good. It's a nice telescope, but when we want to give it to patrons, we worry about losing, for example, eyepieces and the covers, the dust covers, and the things like the batteries going bad because we got one after another person all year. That telescope might be checked out 30 to 40 times. So we really want to kind of button it down and make it a little bit more friendly and a little bit more durable. And so what we'll do is we'll do what we do on the right. We'll put on there maybe a rope on the lens cover, and we'll put, instead of a couple eyepieces that you could put in and out to change the power, we'll make a zoom lens and make sure that's bolted in good. And we'll put stickers all over the place, things like the moon map and don't look at the sun. And on the other side, which you can't see quite here, we have a little camera bag that's strapped on permanently, and we've got an Ottoman guide of the constellations in there, and a headlamp, and a little user manual. So you can see, I'm not going to go through all the details of what we're really trying to do. What we're really saying is that we are making some changes to make it a little bit more durable. And our program here in St. Louis has been going on just about 10 years now. We're coming up on 10 years. So we have a lot of experience. We have well over 200 telescopes. I think I looked up, we have 269 we've actually purchased, and not all of those are in circulation. Sometimes they're set aside for training purposes and so forth. So we've got a lot of experience about this. So that's, the left is what you would buy. The right is what we find is really kind of working for us. Okay. So let's start out with our very first question. I'm going to give this to Tom because he's experienced like I am. Tom, why should our club, in other words, if you're an astronomy club, why should our club participate in the library telescope program?
No, basically, it helps to promote astronomy, and I think most of us amateur astronomers want to do that. Promoting it with people that maybe wouldn't have a chance to use a telescope. Maybe you get some more members for your club by doing this. You have maybe you enjoy engaging with people and teaching library staff how to use it, library patrons how to use it. There's a lot of reasons to do it. It can get to feel like a little bit of work after a while, but the more that in your club that participate, the better off you will be.
Yeah, so what I love about this is that, and I think it's a brilliant idea. A lot of us that are in astronomy clubs, we know that we don't really manage assets particularly well. We don't have, for example, a place to store stuff very well. We have to borrow people's houses, or maybe we rent a locker somewhere or whatever else. We don't have facilities to do programs. We have to go borrow somebody else's. We're not really that good at marketing, and the libraries have all that. And I really love the fact that they love to partner with us, and they can make things happen in a way that really is a lot more difficult for us as astronomers who really are focused on other things. Okay, so this will be my question. So, what is the time commitment to participate in the program? Well, that sort of depends. If you're talking about a club as a whole, it depends, of course, on how many telescopes you have out there. If you're talking about an individual, it depends on their role. If you're an individual, one of the first things you'll have to think about as a club is that you have to make the modifications. The library is probably not equipped to do that, so you're going to have to help them do that. When we started the program in St. Louis, my standard estimate was it would take 6 hours to make the changes to a telescope. And I think over time, we've learned that we can simplify things a lot through some techniques that we're using at least. And I would say it's probably more like a couple hours. The first one will take you a longer time, obviously, but if you're doing several, you'll get pretty good pretty quick. And you don't have to, by the way, make all the changes. For example, some people don't. One of the things we do is we have a red dot finder. That's a thing where you can find the sky, a star in the sky, and put the telescope and focus on that. Well, sometimes that battery will go out pretty quickly if you leave it on. And so one of the modifications is to add a battery pack on the side. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just put batteries in the bag, and when a battery goes out, you can just have them replaced. So there's ways that you can modify it. That's a little bit less time. So you got the person that's going to be building the telescope, or persons, and then you've got occasional maintenance, which is not as bad as you might think. These are pretty simple telescopes, and they last a pretty good long time. There will be little things that break that'll be annoying, but it's not that much really at the end of the day. All right, Tom, what are the liabilities? So I'm worried about this as a club. Like, what am I getting myself into? Am I going to get sued or something like that? So what would you say to that, Tom?
Well, the library owns the telescope, right? Either they bought it themselves, or maybe it was donated to them, but it is the library's telescope. So whatever liabilities are out there, fall to the library. And much like well, the clubs usually have some sort of insurance, but you're really not relying on that at all. There should be no reason that the club is liable for anything. It would fall to the library, and they have usually extensive insurance coverage. So really, that should not be a problem at all.
Yeah, of all the years that I've been working on this, I've not heard of any issues with liability. Even with the eclipse, people were worried about using a telescope to somehow look at the eclipse, the sun. I've heard nothing. There maybe you have, Tom, but I haven't heard anything. So
No,
liability is
nothing.
not really been an issue that I've seen at least. Okay, so this is my question. So where can you buy the telescope? Well, I would say that kind of depends where you are. The U.S., we commonly use Orion telescopes to buy the Star Blast. We also use Zummels. Sometimes there'll be a Celestron telescope here or there. In Europe, I think they use the Bresser telescope because I don't believe Orion and some of the U.S. companies don't really ship because of simply the duties and the issue of getting it there. So Bresser seems to be fairly popular. I think we have several different libraries or educational institutions over there that are doing that. If you happen to be in the U.S. With the Orion purchase, we can actually, as a group, we would arrange for discounts for people that are buying things to put in the libraries. You can get a discount. And if you contact us, we can help you get that discount. And there's a fairly nice selection of stuff you can get, not just the telescope, but star wheels, planispheres, if you will, those type of things, and even eyepieces and things like that. We've looked around. We've managed to find pretty good places to buy a lot of this stuff. And so anyway, I think if you just reach out to our library telescope task force, if you're in the U.S. or even in Europe, because we do have the connections to people and they know where to get stuff. So just reach out to us and we'll make that happen for you. All right, Tom, what's the best way to approach a library? That's always a tricky one, right? So
Yeah, definitely is. And it seems like different approaches work with some libraries and not others. Um, you think maybe I'll just go to the library with the telescope and show it to them. And I tried that, and it wasn't received very well. But I know some people have done that successfully. I mean, I've tried emails, I've tried phone calls. People tend to think you're a salesman trying to sell them something, and in a sense we are. But we're volunteers once you understand how it works. So it can be a difficult thing, but you just got to find the right person at the library. And one of the things that I find really frustrating about approaching them is you'll talk to a person at the library, convince them that it's a great idea, and then they bring it to their boss, and their boss is not so sure. Well, maybe you get to talk to their boss and you convince them, and then it goes to the director maybe, and they shoot it down, money wise, whatever the reasons. But usually, if you can talk to the person who's making the decision, you can convince them to do it because it's such a great program. And the way we do it with a lot of volunteer work, it really makes everything, very simple for the library. But all that considered, the best way I have found to get new libraries involved is word of mouth among the libraries. So the libraries that I work with, I know they're all, they're very appreciative of the free help, and they're looking to help us out a little bit. And I always say, look, contact your friends at other libraries, tell them about it, and we'll see if they're interested, have them get in touch with me. And that really, for the number of libraries that I do right now, it's at 19, and I would say at least 12 of those were directly related to word of mouth from library to library. And sometimes people work at multiple libraries. So they bring it to their second library and talk about it. So there's a lot of ways of doing it. There's no best way, but it's like anything else. It's communicating and getting to the right person and making sure you have the, what you want to say to them as to why it's a good program and laying out the costs and all that. But it really, it varies greatly.
yeah, I think that's my experience too. By the way, libraries are pretty competitive. You think they're laid back, looking at the books all day, but they don't want to be the last guy left, holding the bag. They want to be in there. So if you could find a champion somewhere that's on this thing and they're enthusiastic, that goes a long way to approaching the next library to get them on board. They don't necessarily want to be first, but they certainly don't want to be last. So we've used that technique a couple of times here in St. Louis, and it's worked pretty good. All right, so what are the modification procedures? Well, we actually outlined that when we first started. And what I will say is there's no pure, like, you have to do it this way to make it work. I mean, literally, you can buy the telescope and put it out there for checkout, just like you buy it. What we've learned over time is that if you do that, you're probably going to have a little bit more maintenance issues. In other words, if you have somebody that's kind of watching it, you'll probably lose some eyepieces because there's two eyepieces that come with it. You have to insert those things in and out, and they'll probably get dirty because they'll drop them on the grass somewhere or on the ground somewhere and whatever else. But you can make a couple simple procedures and that'll get you started. But if you go the full boat like we have, you're going to find that there's less maintenance down the road. And you don't have to buy 100 of them. You could buy one and see how it works. And you can, and that's what I would suggest is buy something. And in fact, when we went in to talk to the first librarian, we didn't even have a fully modified telescope. We simply took it in, put it on a tabletop, and let them look at a tree off in some distance. And that was enough to convince the librarian this was pretty easy to use. So the modifications procedures, we've got a lot of different variations on there. You don't have to make that many of them, but you really just want to be keeping an eye on what makes it easier for the person to use it and what is keeps the maintenance as low as possible. So you don't want to have to keep making adjustments or fixes to the telescopes. So, Tom, let's talk about what is the Library Telescope Task Force, because I think that a Library Telescope Task Force could help people, astronomers that want to get started in the program. We have a lot of experience. So will you describe what we are?
Yeah, so this is a great resource. So it's a group of people. I think there's about 50 people involved now, but we meet by Zoom once a month and talk about issues. And so if you've got a problem, you can talk to somebody at one of the sessions each month. We also have a group IO that you can send an email to and ask questions as well. So there's a lot of interaction of people, what problems you're having, something you've run into that you hadn't seen before, and you can get advice from other people. So it's mostly amateur astronomers, but I think there are some library personnel there as well. And that's a pretty nice thing too, to be able to talk to them. So it's just a group really that's knowledgeable about or getting knowledgeable about the library telescope program and helping each other. It To me, this is the best thing about the group that we're doing this and ability to talk and raise issues.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. A really good example I thought was kind of fun. We brought on the country of Netherlands. Uh, I think it was last year or maybe the year before now. It seems like time passes fast here. But anyway, they decided they don't really want a red dot finder. That thing's got batteries and all that. So they looked up and they looked at the US design and they 3D printed a little sight. It's like a little gun sight that they put right on top of the telescope. No batteries. You simply aim two little notches up to each or two little holes up to each other and you got your telescope lined up. Well, heck, we picked that up right back in the US and we printed that several times and then made more modifications to it. So we're tinkering all the time, finding ways to make improvements. And that's really what's great. We share best practices. These guys they're all of them are really very thoughtful and creative. And it's kind of like fun just to find out how each one's doing better than the last guy did. Okay. So what is, yeah,
one of the things that came up with the Netherlands library, which I thought was really kind of funny to me at least. We talk about how you transport the telescope, how you carry it, how you put it in the car with a seatbelt, and they didn't want any of that. Car and a seatbelt? No, people don't really do a lot of driving here. In fact, we ride bicycles, so they needed a way to put it into their bicycle, and they came up with it. I think they wound up buying a case and being able to put the case into a basket on a bicycle. Now that's never come up in the U.S. as far as I've heard, because everybody's driving, right, or walking.
Yeah, that's funny.
So yeah, different countries have different ways of doing things, and it shows. So.
All right. So one of the common questions that we get, in fact, we get a lot of questions to the library website and Facebook page is, okay, what's the cost of the telescope and who pays for it? And I will tell you what we did here in the St. Louis area is that we actually, as our club, we basically bought what I call a seed. In other words, we bought a telescope to give it to, I think, 3 or 4 telescopes, one to multiple libraries to say, look, why don't you just try it, see if you like it. And once they got the telescope, they loved it. And from that point on, they purchased really a lot of them. And what's the cost of the telescope? In the US, it's probably ranging, if you take the fully modified telescope with all the stuff that we're talking about, the zoom lenses and all the extra stuff, it's probably in the $350-$400 range, and that's after the discounts. Um, and again, I will say that initially I was really concerned that libraries would be pushing back on this, but even the tiniest little libraries, they do fundraisers, they sell books, and suddenly they have enough money to buy a telescope, or they have a friends of the library. Or one library had a doctor said, look, here's my credit card. I love the program. Buy what you need. Here's a credit card. Go charge it. And that's what they did. And so I think to get them in is really the biggest issue. And if you can give them or donate a telescope to seed the program, that's usually a pretty good start. So anyway, that's one of the ways to go about it. But typically, the clubs do not buy the telescopes. The libraries pay for it either through donations or through funds they raise themselves.
Yeah, and the difference between Don's operation and mine, Don is in a big library system. He's got what you were telling me over 260 telescopes, where I deal with 19 libraries, and so it's a totally different kind of thing. I have them buy the telescope directly, and once they have it with the zoom eyepiece, then I go to their location and modify it. Sometimes I got to bring something back to make some changes to it, but to cut the hole in the cover, which is part of the modifications. But so it's a little different. It runs differently depending on the number of people you have involved, and the number of libraries. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so this is the question we get a lot from astronomers. They always want to tinker, say, well, I don't like your telescope. I want a different telescope. I don't want a much bigger telescope. So, Tom, answer this question. Can't we use a larger or a different telescope? You want to respond to that?
Well, of course you could, but it wouldn't be a good idea. I mean, the beauty of this telescope is that it's compact. It's a good, solid beginner telescope. It's simple. Everything is more or less permanently attached. Now I'll put quotes on that, permanent. We make it so you can get them off, but like if you had a tripod, I've had a lot of libraries say, "Oh no, we don't want people to have a table to put the telescope on. We want a tripod." Well, you give a tripod to somebody who's not really familiar with it, with a telescope to begin with, and the whole thing. That thing's going to not be tightened enough, and it's going to fall over and break. There's just and tripods are expensive. They add a lot to the cost. So there's a lot of reasons why this is the right telescope to use. It's small. It's easy to get around. The modifications make it very simple to use. And you're putting this telescope into the hands of people who don't have a lot of experience. So you want to make it as simple as possible. And that's really the goal. So sure, you could lend out a bigger telescope, but I think you're going to have trouble with parts being lost and damaged just because of the complexity of it. This started this way back in 2008, and I see Mark Stobridge is on, and Mark was the one that started it, and I think he made the right choice. It's perfectly simple. It's a good, solid telescope, yet it is a beginner scope. And if you're trying to make it more than that, well, then sure, maybe you need a bigger telescope. But getting this into the hands of people who've never used a telescope before, to me, is the key here. And, they can use it repeatedly. And then maybe they wind up buying their own telescope. Yeah, that could certainly lead to that. But, just as a general thing that you can get to a lot of different people, get a lot of use out of it, this is the perfect kind. So I would definitely not use a bigger one, a different one, or a larger one. There are several makes. When the Star Blast wasn't available, we used the Zummel 114 for a while. So there are alternatives that are very, very similar to this. But I've actually, I had a library that insisting they had to have tripod, and they said, well, okay, well, good luck. And I just didn't get involved with them. They came back to me later on and said, yeah, you're right. We're going to buy the right the telescope you recommend, and we used it. So,
okay,
bigger isn't necessarily better in this situation.
Right. All right, so that's going to segue into our top 10 questions here. What is the best place to host a star party? And there'll be different theories about the different thoughts about this, but what I would say for me, it really comes down to what your objective is. Okay. So if your objective is to take someone out and show them the deepest, darkest thing you could ever find that they could barely find it, you're probably going to have to show them where to find it. Um, it's probably not going to be what I would do for a star party. What I want to do, my goal is simply to host the telescope star party at the library. I know that sounds crazy. It's going to have the brightest lights you could ever imagine. I always try to set up a program when there's a moon up, a really nice first quarter moon, or all the way up through the full moon. And even better, if I can get Saturn or Jupiter, which this telescope will really do a wonderful job. And I know this is going to be hard, but I am trying not to touch that telescope. I'm going to make the library patron do everything. And I might take them with my telescope and show them the deepest, darkest thing in the sky, far furthest away. And I might be impressed, but they're going to be a lot more impressed when they use this telescope themselves to get on the moon and they look at the moon and go, wow, or Saturn or Jupiter. If I can get them to do that at a library, where I get a lot of people there. And if I figure if they can do that with me at the library and get on the moon, then they can check that telescope home and go play with it in a dark sky somewhere where they can do even more things than that. So I want to host myself the library telescope program at a star party at the library itself if I can. Now, sometimes that doesn't work. We've encountered some issues where libraries are closing pretty early, and they have staff issues and sometimes things like that. But for the most part, I have done literally several hundred of these programs. And I will say, if you can have a library patron, focus on the moon, focus on Saturn, or focus on Jupiter, and maybe a star or two, just learn how to aim it and focus it. They'll go home extremely happy. And that's how we're getting 30 to 40 checkouts per year of that telescope in our library systems. In fact, there's even a waiting list. I think with one library, it's a couple, 300 people waiting to get that telescope. That's what works for us. You can make it more than that. You can, and by the way, we do typically bring our big telescopes to a library telescope party, a star party, because after they've done the small one, I want them to see what a big one that's very similar. It operates in a very typical. You have to find the thing, focus and all that. So they learn that the techniques are very similar. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here and let's see if we got any questions in our Zoom. If you got a question, please post it in our Zoom area. And if we got anybody in our chat areas here in our Zoom, we got Facebook and Zoom. So if you're on Facebook, just go ahead and post the questions there, and on Zoom, post it in the chat area. So I think that the biggest issue that I've seen, Tom, is just a reluctance to step into the program and just start it. Because it seems a bit overwhelming. And we just talked about this at our last library telescope program. We got so much stuff on our library telescope program website. It looks like it's scary. But at the end of the day, it's a very simple telescope. It's about as simple as you can get. I mean, it's literally just a little zoom thing that you focus on something and get a focus, just like a little microscope, really. And you got a little way to find the stars, and it's pretty durable. It's kind of like a little tank. We've actually fixed every single one we've had out of 10 years. Now, we've had a couple that have been lost, that some have been stolen for whatever reason or never come back. Not as many as you might think. But at the end of the day, this has worked really good. And so I'm been very impressed with this as far as Mark Stobridge. I can see him up on the screen there. They've done a great job of designing this, and it's worked. And we're tweaking it, but we're only tweaking it in the sense that we're making a few more changes just to make it more durable. I'm trying to simplify things to make it less and less work, and it's working for the most part. So, do you see any questions at all, Tom, at all?
No, I don't see any. Did want to make a comment though about the star parties. I live right outside of New York City, right? So we're right outside of the city, probably the most light polluted place in the world, and so we're outside of it a little bit. So we can get reasonable skies, but not by any means good. So when I go to the library and I try to do it from the library, I'm not seeing any stars. So I stopped calling it a star party. I call it a moon party. And we only do it in the first quarter moon because the libraries close early, right? So you can't stay too late. And maybe we can see the first quarter moon before sundown, before it gets, before it gets dark at all. So that's a start. And then the later you stay, you can do it. Now, I have one library that it is like the perfect example of, why bother? they're right across the street from a railroad train station, the Long Island Railroad commuter line that goes into Manhattan. And the lights there are up on the platform and then down underneath, and it is just so bright. I mean, you have trouble seeing a planet. You know, even if Jupiter or Saturn are there,
Yeah.
you really work at it, you can find them. But really, it's all about the moon. So I do a lot. I do moon parties now,
Yeah, Moon,
and it's
Saturn, and
simpler.
Jupiter. Moon, Saturn, and Jupiter. Saturn's fun if
Yeah,
they can get on Saturn. And
yeah.
there's ways to find that guy. If you can get on there, that's really great. You know, so Saturn and Jupiter are both fun. Well, Mark, we're going to sign off here, but if you want to just unmute yourself and say hi to this. Mark's the guy that kind of got help get this, or he actually designed this thing and walked around. So you want to say something before we sign off, Mark?
And Mark is considered the father of the Library Telescope program.
Yeah.
We affectionately call him that.
It's dangerous asking me if I have a few words because I tend to talk a lot.
Yeah.
But I've been uh, going around to the libraries here in New Hampshire, and the oldest telescope, which has now been in place since
2008, I think, right?
2009.
Yeah.
The collimation was off a smidge,
Wow.
but by smidge, I mean, I use a laser to collimate the things, and it would be perfectly fine for anybody who is less obsessive than I am.
Yeah.
They're amazing little scopes. I'm just very pleased with how that's worked out.
Yeah.
And I have yet to come across anybody who, when they're introduced to the program, doesn't say, wow, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Which I just, of course, modestly just nod and
All right. Well, that's good. Well, it's a great program, and what I think is the best part about the whole thing, it's simple, and that's the thing. By keeping it simple, and that's where when we try to get too big a telescope and too fancy of stuff, all the electronics, which are getting amazing by the way these days. We're all very familiar with electronics; are getting really amazing. But if you keep it like a very simple thing, then that's really what I call the first step towards astronomy. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. We will have a recording posted sometime tomorrow to our Library Telescope homepage of our website. And it's already, of course, on Facebook here. But Tom, I appreciate you helping me once again. Next month, we're going to talk about some of the common maintenance issues. I do so many telescopes. I know some of the things that I see, and I suspect that's really what most of us see, just things that break. But for the most part, they're very fixable, but we will try to cover some of those. So, and Mark, thanks once again, for your comments. And it's good to see you once again tonight. Okay. So good night, guys.
good night, all.